So have you noticed, it's interesting to talk about a lot, this issue's talked a lot, have you noticed this issue firsthand in observing people in personal and social situations? Because there's a lot of people talk about that, but you've noticed this issue in your own personal observations as well.
Well, I am a 20-something, and hardly any of the other people in my age group are anywhere near other men in my age group I know are anywhere near established yet in a way where they're going to be desirable to the opposite sex, able to support a family. That's what I see firsthand. A generation of young men that's getting called the Peter Pan generation, the lost generation, what have you, even in the mainstream media. And these mainstream writers, they're always clueless about it, about this trend. They don't understand why.
Or they kind of like they pick on the men. Like you saw the Kay Heimowitz and the Bill Bennett articles saying that the men need to man up.
They blame the men, where a combination of factors such as female-friendly laws, among them an artificially high increased statutory rape law, plus artificial scarcity, increasing efficiency of production, making it harder and harder to get good-paying work, makes it increasingly difficult for men to get established and really be a part of society. And as a result, you have this Peter Pan generation, as the mainstream media calls it, with little to no social involvement with their birth society.
Okay, so you say the females, they've always been the gatekeepers of human reproduction, and this enormous power had a major limiting factor. And you said only a handful of years at peak value in which they had to settle with the best mate they could find. If they did not hurry, their opportunity would be suspended, and a new generation of young women would be taking their pick of the richest and most desirable men.
As I explained, there's the force of female hypergamy. Women want to marry up, but if they have a shorter time to do it, it puts a limit on how selective they can be. And as such, that extra 3 to 4 years or whatever has a huge aggregate impact on the market, especially when gainful employment and ways for men to establish themselves as sufficiently valuable are on the decrease.
And then you say it does explain our present. You talk about those laws again. Then you say feminism and the overall decline in female standards of behavior can be explained by a shift in the balance of power. Basically, say females now simply have fewer restraints on their behavior.
Now, people have had a lot of emotional reactions to my gender articles, but there's one thing people should take away from it. It is approaching the sexual game in terms of a realpolitik balance of power, where if that balance of power is skewed beyond a certain extent, you can predict that there's going to be havoc.
And then you talk about the society that promoting the interest of women. You say who are in twilight of their reproductive years, the rate of fertility and the quality of the offspring must fall in relative to those societies.
They'll have fewer offspring, and they're going to have a higher incidence of genetic disorders, and that's going to weaken the society relative to other competing societies. So when you have a multicultural society, you can't be falling way behind your peers in reproductive rate, or you run the risk of being co-opted. And a lot of white people especially, see this happening in their community.
And then then back to what you were talking about, is that you talk about how it takes a man a decade or two to reaching adulthood to get established, and you basically say it's a sink or swim. You bring up how a minority managed to have kids. I think it's 40%. I think you're right for history. 40% of men reproduced, while 80% of women, and that's a fact. But you said the male advantage has always been time.
Yes, we have longer at our peak physical value before we start to go downhill in desirability, say mid-30s to 40, right about when a lot of these guys are getting established. And the traditional thing, if you got established, say in your late 30s, you would still marry a woman considerably younger because she would be able to have multiple healthy children.
So I know that you talk about the statutory rape rape laws, and I know the issue of underage girls is extremely taboo, but let's just put that aside for a second. Even if you talk about let's say a guy becomes established when he's 35, it's extremely difficult for him to say to marry an adult woman who's maybe 15 years younger. Would you say that is accurate?
Historically, it has not been difficult, but yeah, it's really difficult now. Partly because of the subsidy that I write about, and just legislation in general that distorts the balance of power in favor of women.
But even if you look at girls in college, I think they care more about popularity than they do about money. I think mid-20s, and when they get to be like mid-20s, then they're looking for a guy who's successful.
Right. They will hook up and so on in college, but how many are choosing to have children in college? Not too many. When it comes to having children and securing the future of their society, they generally are looking for some kind of solid resources, in addition to popularity or prestige.
Okay, so then you say when the women are approaching the height of their beauty in their late teens, you say they're society's most powerful means of motivating and inspiring men to do great things. You say great civilizations find constructive ways to channel the abundant energies of their men, and the right incentives have to be there. But you basically say those incentives are no longer there.
Yeah, I'm not saying that people think this out on an explicit declarative level, hardly. I am saying that men will do things and fight for prestige because on the instinctual level it is moving them towards reproduction. And if those incentives are there, men will go to extraordinary lengths. And that's how a lot of the most competitive societies have risen to the top. They actually capitalize on sexual repression and make life hard for their men.
So you talk about how present society...
But they also have a suitable reward in the case of good performance. And I sort of point out in my article where, though virginity is not talked about in our culture, it's still very valuable. She's going to be a lot less likely to cheat. She's going to be more loyal in the long run.
So you say that we look at who our present society rewards with many of its best young women, and you say an assortment of high school athletes, class presidents, and homecoming kings who have yet to accomplish, or you say contribute absolutely nothing to society, are showered with society's greatest gifts early in life for throwing balls around, attending parties, and generally acting like thugs.
That does sort of...
Hold on, then you say, in short, high school football teams get a steady supply of young virgins while other males are expected to work hard for their leavings for the rest of their lives.
Yeah, these other guys who are not completely socially dominant in that isolated high school environment, they're laboring till age 35, 40 to get with what the quarterback got when he was in his teens. I mean, people see this and they might not think about it, but they do act on it.
Well, I thought about those issues when I was in high school, but I think the point is, like, the men who work hard, if they're like lucky, they may get those girls when those girls are like 25, but in some cases even like well into their 30s, and it's kind of, you said even if it sends kind of a message to the young men in our society. Right.
The frat presidents and the quarterbacks have gotten the reward, not the guy who labored hard until he was 35 to build a society.
And I think in Asian societies, I've heard that actually girls would go after the smartest guys. It is more like that in Asian societies. And that's why Asia's becoming dominant. I mean, people complain about that, but I think in some ways our society is a degenerate and unfair society, and in a lot of ways our country and our society kind of deserves to collapse.
It's the direction it's going right now. The prognosis is not good.
Yeah, I mean, you say that. You say the majority of high school males see these thugs as monopolizing the sexual market of their formative...
Your formative experience as a teen is to grow up in this cloister kleptocracy. I mean, how does that affect your attitude towards society overall? Once get out in the world as an